FAFSA 40 recommendations, part 8. I'm on page 43, and I'm still talking about interpretive notes of recommendation 6. I kind of left off in the middle of a thought, which was countries should establish necessary legal authority and identify domestic competent authorities responsible for implementing and enforcing targeted financial sanctions in accordance with the following standards and procedures. We got through A and B, and now we want to get into C. Countries should have mechanisms, for communicating designations to the financial sector and the DNFVPs immediately upon taking such action, and providing clear guidance, particularly to financial institutions and other persons or entities, including DNFVPs, that may be holding targeted funds or other assets on their obligations in taking action under freezing mechanisms. Countries should require financial institutions and DNFVPs to report to competent authorities any assets frozen or actions taken in compliance with the prohibition requirements of the relevant Security Council resolutions, including attempted transactions, and ensure that such information is effectively utilized by the competent authorities. And lastly, E, countries should adopt effective measures which protect the rights of bona fide third parties acting in good faith when implementing the obligations under Recommendation 6. Then you have a section D, delisting, unfreezing, and providing access to frozen funds or other assets. 7. Countries should develop and implement publicly known procedures to submit delisting requests to the Security Council in the case of persons and entities designated pursuant to Resolution 1267 of Resolution 1999 and its successor resolutions that, in the view of a country, do not or no longer meet the criteria for designation. In the event that the 1267 Committee or the 1988 Committee has delisted a person or entity, the obligation to freeze no longer exists. In the case of delisting requests related to Al-Qaeda, which procedures and criteria should be in accordance with procedures adopted in the 1267 where 1988 Committee had delisted a person or entity under Security Resolution 1730 of Resolution 2006, or year 2006, can't really tell, or 1735 of 2006, or 1822 of 2008, 1904 of 2009, and 1989 of 2011, and any successor resolution. In the case of delisting requests related to the Taliban and related threats to the peace, security, and stability of Afghanistan, such procedures and criteria should be in accordance with the procedures adopted by the 1988 Committee under Security Council Resolution 1730 of 2006 and 1735 of 2006, 1822 of 2008, 1904 of 2009, 1988 of 2011, and any successor resolutions. 8. For persons and entities designated pursuant to Resolution 1373 of 2001, countries should have appropriate legal authorities and procedures and mechanisms to delist and unfreeze the funds or other assets of persons and entities that no longer meet the criteria for designation. Countries should also have procedures in place to allow, upon request, review of the designation decision before a court or other independent and competent authorities. For persons or entities with the same or similar same or similar? Name as designated persons or entities who are inadvertently affected by a freezing mechanism, i.e. a false positive. Countries should adopt and implement publicly known procedures to unfreeze the funds or other assets of such persons or entities in a timely manner upon verification that the person or entity involved is not a designated person or entity. 10. Where countries have determined that funds or other assets of persons and entities designated by the Security Council or one of its relevant sanctions committees are necessary for the expenses for the payment of certain types of fees, expenses, and service charges, or for extraordinary expenses, countries should authorize access to such funds or other assets in accordance with the procedures set out in Security Council Resolution 1452 of 2002 and any successor resolution. On the same grounds, countries should authorize access to funds or other assets if freezing measures are applied to persons or entities designated by a supranational authority pursuant to Resolution 1373 of 2001 and as set out in Resolution 1963 of 2010. Alright, I have no idea what they're talking about with all these resolutions. There's some sort of UN thing. So I'm just going to write them down and maybe get into that at some other point in time. Perhaps it relates to the 19 articles, I don't know. But I'm going to write here resolutions. We have a whole slew of them. I mean, a slew of them. We've been talking about 1267 a lot. And 1373 a lot. 1730. Now 1735. 1822. 1904. 1988. We've been talking about a lot. I'm going to highlight the ones we've been talking about a lot. And then there's a new one on this page, which is 1452. Yeah, and then there was at the end of the paragraph, there's going to be a 1963. And if I see any new ones, I'll write them down as well. In any successor resolutions, on the same grounds, countries should authorize access to funds or other assets if freezing measures are applied to persons and entities designated by a supranational country pursuant to Resolution 1373, Designation 2001, and as set out in Resolution 1963. 11. Countries should provide a mechanism through which a designated person or entity can challenge their designation with a view of having it reviewed by a competent authority or a court. With respect to designations on the Al-Qaeda sanctions list, countries should inform designated persons and entities of the availability of the United Nations Office of the Ombudsman pursuant to Resolution 1904. Oh, I have it. Okay. To accept delisting petitions. Countries should have mechanisms for communicating delistings and unfreezings to the financial sector and the DNFVP immediately upon taking such action and providing adequate guidance, particularly to financial institutions and other persons or entities, including DNFVPs, and may be holding targeted funds or other assets on their obligations to respect a delisting or unfreezing action. United Nations designation criteria, Section E. 13. The criteria for designation as specified in the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions. So let's just say the Security Council resolutions. Oh my God, there they are now. It makes some of them sense. Security Council resolutions 1267 to 1989, 1989 and 2011, and their successor resolutions. Any person or entity participating in the financing, planning, facilitating, preparing, or perpetration of acts or activities by or in conjunction with, under the name of, or on behalf of, or in support of supplying, selling, or transferring arms and related material to, recruiting for, or otherwise supporting acts or activities of Al-Qaeda, or cell, affiliate, splinter group, or derivative thereof, or two, any undertaking owned or controlled directly or indirectly by any person or entity designated under subsection 13A1, or by persons acting on their behalf at or at their discretion. B. Security Resolution Council Resolutions 1267, 1999, 1988 of 2011, and their successor resolution. Any person or entity participating in the financing, planning, facilitating, preparing, or perpetuating of acts or activities by, in conjunction with, or under the name of, or on behalf of, or in support of, supplying, selling, or transferring arms and related materials to, recruiting for, or otherwise supporting acts or activities of those designated and other individuals, groups, undertakings, and entities associated with the Taliban and constituting a threat to the peace, stability, and security of Afghanistan, or to any undertaking owned or controlled directly or indirectly by any persons or entity designated under subsection 13b1 of this subparagraph, or by persons acting on their behalf or at their discretion. 3. Security Council Resolution 1373 of 2001. Any person or entity who commits or attempts to commit terrorist acts or who participates in or facilitates the commission of terrorist acts. 2. Any entity owned or controlled directly or indirectly by any person or entity designated under subsection 13ci of this subparagraph, or any person or entity acting on behalf of or at the discretion of any person or entity designated under subsection 13i of this subparagraph. We're on page 47, Interpretive Note to Recommendation 7, Targeted Financial Sanctions Related to Proliferation. I could say we're definitely beyond the 1/3 point of that 40 recommendation. The objective. Recommendation 7 requires countries to implement targeted financial sanctions to comply with the United Nations Security Council resolutions that require countries to freeze without delay the funds or other assets of, and to ensure that no funds or other assets are made available to or for the benefit of any person or entity designated by the United Nations Security Council under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the United Nations, pursuant to the Security Council resolutions that relate to the prevention and disruption of financing and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. 2. It should be stressed that none of the requirements in Recommendation 7 is intended to replace other measures or obligations that may already be in place for dealing with funds or other assets in the context of criminal, civil, or administrative investigation and proceeding as is required by international treaties or Security Council resolutions relating to weapons of mass destruction. Non-proliferation. The focus of Recommendation 7 is on the preventative measures that are necessary to and unique in the context of stopping the flow of funds or other assets to proliferators or proliferation, and the use of funds or other assets by proliferators or proliferation as required by the United Nations Security Council. Designations. Designations are made by the Security Council and annexes to the relevant resolutions or by the Security Council committees established pursuant to these resolutions. There is no specific obligation upon the United Nations member states to submit proposals for designation. 48. To the relevant Security Council committees. However, in practice, the committees primarily depend upon requests for designation by member states. Security Council Resolution 1718 of 2006 and 1737 provide that relevant committees shall promulgate guidelines as may be necessary to facilitate the implementation of the measures imposed by these resolutions.